procedures that might be followed, and it may still be remanded to the planning board, so that's not going to happen from the sounds of that.
Well, I'd like to have a quick one on the passage.
Sure, you can just stay 6 feet away, okay? I'll probably have a beer tonight.
So essentially, this is where we're at. I'll say you're reading the whole thing there. We've talked to council and other council just to reaffirm what we've heard. And the town is not going to take any legal action regarding this because essentially it is a civil matter between neighbors. I know it's a big one, but based on the RSAs that we're hearing, the way they're being interpreted and the legal decisions that we're getting back, at this time the town is not in a position to go one way or the other. Now that being said, we are still continuing to reach out to Mr. Tormeo because of the holiday and all of that. We weren't able to set up a time that was convenient for everybody. We are still pursuing that and trying to, as one of your neighbors was asking, we're trying to mediate just an agreed upon solution for everyone. Probably won't make everybody happy, but at least to mitigate the damage that was done and address the issues that you legitimately have. But beyond just trying to facilitate that, we're not in a position where we can demand anything or, legally require them to do anything else at this time.
Did the town council talk about the lack of this excavation report being filed means that there's no way to prove it was filed, so you're treating it as if it exists, from what I can tell, or is there any way to look at it as it was not filed, in which case, the planning board, Tormeo would lose grandfather status, the planning board could issue a permit, including hours of operation, number of trips per day, some discussion around diminution of property values and the like. Just wondering why, if that gives you any leverage, or again, going back to town council.
The town would have to prove, we would have to have physical proof that we had requested that from the business. And we don't have that. And consistently we've seen that, on lot mergers and things like that, RSAs can demand and set arbitrary dates for things all they want, but it does not hold up in court in the slightest when a law is passed and it just puts an arbitrary, either it's pushed back or it's completely nullified. And what the position that puts us in is we're trying to reach back 30 years to either the person, they don't work here, or they're dead, or there wasn't even someone in that position who could speak to it. And there's no real path forward for us to determine, I know what it says in there. It just, we have no way of establishing that, not even if it was filed, but whether we requested it to be filed.
Okay.
And so what we could say is, well, we don't have this on file. And they could just turn around and say, well, you never asked us to have that on file. And it's just a he said, she said kind of thing.
Well, I'd just like to, there's one paragraph here I'd like to read that specifically addresses that. An associated issue is whether the planning board was responsible for notifying operators of the excavation report requirement. According to the law, the report should have been filed within 1 year after receiving written notification from the regulator, and in no case later than 2 years following the August 4th, 1989. Some operators have felt that the first part of the sentence obligated the planning boards to claim the second part clearly puts the onus on the excavators. This question is largely moot since much time has now elapsed. But while the language is not as precise as it could have been, it does seem to imply that regardless of whether the landowners were ever notified, they were nevertheless responsible for filing the report. So that's saying that it's on Tormeo to file that. It's not on the town to have notified them. It's black and white, under this RSA.
Thank you.
And all I can speak to is what the legal professional that we retained as counsel has told us. There's what's in a book, and then there's what's going to hold up in court.
This is a law, right? It's not, this is this is what governs them. They're hiding behind regulations, and we're showing them that this is a law that states, you know, they're supposed to have filed this report, and they never did it.
Is it a law or an RSA?
RSA was
The RSA is not a law until it's challenged in court and affirmed one way or the other.
There's legal cases in here regarding this RSA, so it has some kind of power.
Well, we have the answer now. I mean, we'll have to look at the handbook. It doesn't sound like we'll budge. You know, you guys will, I shouldn't say budge, but, you know, your legal counsel has made a decision, and we'll have to decide what to do. I appreciate that you're still going to talk with Tormeo. If you think it would be advantageous for us to call directly, assuming we should stay out, but if it would help if the neighbors call directly, we could try that peacefully, of course. You know.
I mean, the intent is to reach out and at least get a line of communication going. I mean, I think everybody's aware of what the problem is now. So we're going to continue to pursue that. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have the resources to address the problems that the town has right now, let alone 30 years ago, with paperwork that we weren't able to establish. And again, I have to put a plug in for the code enforcement officer, you know, because this is yet another example of something where not all of this can be taken care of by volunteers. It's something that needs a dedicated person full-time to be handling these issues. And I understand the frustration, but we have to go with town council, and again, we're going to try and broker some kind of deal.
I mean, do you expect within a month or two, or a week or two, you know, certainly not a week, but a few weeks, you might have more information as far as, you know, it's winter, there's not as much going on, but he is still operating out there, but at least a direction. And it could be, as an example, I don't think he's going to say, I'll go back to where I was, I'm going to shut down, I feel bad for you guys, but maybe he might say something like, I'm going to pick a number, 300 yards, build up a berm, do some planting. That at least would go a long way towards talking with the neighbors. And, you know, it's only 8 or 9 houses, but it is the neighborhood too, because just the backup signals along are much, you know, beep, beep, all day. I've actually put a noise thing on my phone. It's not over the noise ordinance, but again, I'm going to start blasting back album music or something.
Yeah,
So,
what we can do
you know,
is, if Susan has your contact information, if you just give us 2 weeks, we'll follow up with you in 2 weeks and let you know where we're at.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough. Yeah. And to Selectman Wilson, you were going to follow up with the governor's associate's number that I had? Did you?
They haven't responded to it.
They haven't responded, okay. All right.
Right, you called and I called both, so the number that they'd gotten a comment from the governor's assistant.
And they were saying they had nothing to do with it though, and it was out of their hands.
I mean, so far, it seems like the strongest statement we've got was early from when they compared the satellite images, where they were checking whether he had gone beyond what he was allowed to based on his first, and he had not.
Okay.
So far, those are the only people that I've had a lot of faith in what they've told us, because they were able to pull up, you know, the video from years ago to now and see the difference in the site. And it's kind of like everybody wants to say, no, we don't know what to do with that. Go talk to them.
Or even worse, they say, yeah, no, we need to do something about that. And then when you follow up a week or 2 later, they're like, well, no, we can't. Or that's not under our authority, that's not our jurisdiction.
And I'm not as impacted. The other neighbors are not quite as impacted as Matt and Sarah or Jim and Tina. Jim isn't feeling well. He's undergoing chemo for lung cancer, so he's got that going on. Otherwise, Jim Baraffield would be here. But they've really been impacted by the deforestation. And I know it's legal, but and of course that in turn amplifies the sound and the pits. I know they've stopped, but the pit being expanded. So I'm hoping, you know, maybe if you can discuss with Tormeo, or even if it's a combined session where, you know, or something, just to talk about some limit in the spring where they can build back to whatever, and planting and a berm to cut down the noise. Something along those lines.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is, in talking with councils, you know, from a position of neighbors who are being directly affected by these things, you have legal recourse in that the town does not have. You can, go after them for nuisance violations, property value, things like that.
So
And
you can still get our own counsel off.
yes, I mean, and it's something that would have a lot more teeth coming from residents who are directly affected by it. The town obviously encompasses people who live on Jericho Road. I'm not saying it doesn't, but the broader town does not have a direct line to this, whereas the residents who are directly being affected by this do. And so I would just ask you to consider that as well, but let's see where this can get us and go from there.
And
This fall.
I'll have to talk to see what other avenues we want to pursue, but if you're going to be calling us back in a couple of weeks, we'll see what happens there too. I think I could probably we'll talk, but I could probably try to email the governor again or talk to the Bureau of Mines, the guys that I talked to see if maybe they have a record of it or something, or confirmation that there's no record even. That they asked for it and never got it, the excavation report. But right now, you have no record. It's 30 years ago. You have no record of it, and that doesn't deny or prove anything, as you said, from a court of law perspective.
According to the law, the report should have been filed. It's written right here. According
I
to
know.
the law. Not an RSA, the law.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
We'll have
That's
to-
why I was
there is a-
saying to you that you as an abutter have more teeth because of that particular phrase. That gives you some serious clout.
And did he file with the Bureau of Mines, which doesn't exist anymore?
Let's go to Commissioner of State of New Hampshire for RSA 12, which is mining and excavation, which is separate from 155E. And that was in effect as of 1979, that they had to file a report to the Commissioner in New Hampshire, not for the town. So you might have some luck under that RSA to see if something was filed at that point.
was it one more time? What did I say?
12.
RSA 12?
And they also, RSA 155E was what was effective in 1979, but future action had to take place in 1989 in order for them to continue, and I don't know if that happened. The New Hampshire Municipal Association has an article about mining and permitting and what's federal, state, and local, and what actions local can take about things to do with gravel pits and mining. And one of them, which is one of my questions tonight, because, I've lived there for over 30 years. And this year, I understand that, you bought a certain place and the whole thing, but for 30 years, I haven't had things shake off my wall and fall off, which we're having now. And so my question is, why is this local police and fire still issuing them a blasting permit? Because blasting, you're not supposed to be able to feel anything to do with blasting off the property other than using a scientific instrument. So we already know that you can feel all this blasting on residents' homes attached to the industrial zone. Why is the town still issuing them a blasting permit at the levels they're getting? Because the fire is supposed to be local, according to the RSA, it's the local fire and police who issue the blasting permits.
We don't issue draft blasting.
Fire does.
Please don't.
Fire
No,
does.
no.
On fire, it's through state police, not fire
It's
marshal.
regulated.
The fire marshal told me it was local. I called everybody, and I called local, who put me to fire marshal, who put me to state police, who put me back to local. So somebody's got to step up and tell us who's actually
When
in
we talked to
charge.
state police, they said we were in full control and any police should come to us.
That's what I heard, that's what they told me after I called them all.
That's what I mean, we get to run around depending on who we talk to.
They're governed by the New Hampshire State Police Explosives.
And my guess is, Ellen, that would have to do with towns that have a blasting ordinance. Some towns do actually have a blasting
I
ordinance.
talked to them, they signed her, they told me they did.
Who's there?
And my point is, I get that it's probably cheaper to blast once with a lot of stuff to get as much rock as you can, but that's what's shaking all the properties. There's nothing that says you have to let them blast to let them make the most money. Tell them they have to blast less.
Like I
So
said,
that it's not shaking
the
anyone's.
last blast was built in my house,
That's what I'm saying.
and I'm nowhere near it.
So while I get that there's mining and excavation laws and who can find anything from 30 years ago, it's the current blasting that's damaging the houses. So don't give them the permit. Or find out who gives them the permit. And as the town complained that the blasting they're doing is going off their site and impacting all types of other residences. And stop them that way.
Because one of the first things we did is, once we found the appropriate authority, which was no longer the fire marshal's office, it's state police, we made it known to them that we were having an issue and what steps we could take. And what they had recommended is contacting the blaster specifically, which is main drilling and blasting, and Don reached out to him, and that was one of the first things we did. We let them know that that was an area that we're having a problem with, and we would appreciate if they didn't blast there. So,
I'm saying that if the town could find out who's actually in charge, because I did what everybody told me to do, and I started local, police, fire marshal, brought me back to local. Somebody needs to know who's in charge, and then it'd be really great if the town said to whoever issues the permit, stop issuing the permit, they're damaging property off. Because if you look up blasting, it says what the requirements are. And one of them is that, you know, like if I have some sort of whatever they use for a scientific tool in my house, that doesn't count if I can measure that. But if I can feel the vibrations at my house without a scientific measurement, they're not supposed to do that. So,
Well, we actually heard a different thing on that too. They said when they're putting these instruments at the various houses, they gave us a blasting report.
cool.
And they're well within what they're allowed to do.
Well, they weren't in my house, twice.
They were at his house, and I was standing where it was.
Yeah, they were already done.
All I do is I just look up the New Hampshire Municipal Association's guides to blasting and stuff, and they list the RSA where it says that you're not supposed to be able to feel the blasting off the property.
I really think if I had been standing where I was that day and not knowing that was gonna happen, you may have fallen over. As close as we were. I mean, it shook that.
I get that that operation's been here, I've been here for 30 years, but this year it's ridiculous. And it's my understanding, and I may have wrong information, that there was an intent to cut that has far exceeded what the permit was. So what's happening with that?
I don't think that's true. I think there were two intent.
there were two
And
separate.
I said I may be wrong, but that's what I had.
But we already established, we have no
The
control.
second one was more. And we don't have a choice but to sign intent to cut.
Guess what, the intent to cut is supposed to be accurate. So if it wasn't,
But I
then
think there were two.
that was, and that may be that we just heard about the one.
The second one wasn't signed, but I thought, the first one was, but not the second one.
And we found out later that by law, we're required to sign it, whether we agree with them or not.
But you didn't sign it. So they cut an extra 20 acres.
Before getting the permit.
No, the second permit was signed by us. Once we were brought to our attention from the Department of Revenue that we have to sign it. And pretty much the only reason we can't sign it is if there's a conservation easement on there that has a need for a forestry management plan. We can review that plan, make sure but we can't even stop it, even if it's not in line with that plan.
No, but was the permit granted before they signed it, or before they cut it, or after they cut it?
I couldn't tell you that.
I think I could, but.
Again, we have, whether it was or wasn't, we have no authority in that whatsoever. We're just there to sign it, and it's an instrument of taxation, is how it's been explained to us. That's all it is an instrument of taxation. So if there's a question as to how much they actually took out of there, if it was beyond what they actually filed an intent to cut for, then that's pretty much the only thing we can come after it for.
So I want to make sure everybody knew it wasn't just 155E, there is another one that governs this, and I think it's 12. And the thing about blasting is that just because someone's blasting doesn't mean they have to blast at the maximum they want if it's impacting everybody else's property. Some agency in this state must be able to limit the amount that someone's using to blast to stop impacting residences. I'm not near these guys. I'm like down, I'm right near Hunt Road, and I'm feeling it. It's crazy.
It's not getting better, it's just gonna keep
I'm a
getting worse.
highway all the way.
it happened. So I'm just saying that you might want to look at blasting requirements and get somebody in this state to finally step up and say who's in charge to give them a permit to blast in this town.
State police,
And HMA says it's local.
state police.
Well, the state police also told me it wasn't them. My point is, you've got my information, you can look into it, because they sent me right back here.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know what else we could do. We'll wait to be, I'm assuming you'll put out the agenda at some point. We'll see it on the agenda, and we'll go from there. We'll talk mapping, do some more checking, and talk about what the next steps are. But again, as you indicated, there's a little hope that maybe Mr. Tormeo can be spoken with and something might happen there. So,
It's worth a try.
I mean, the hope is that he will want to be a good neighbor, being aware of this. But again, I mean, that's, once we've established communication with him, we'll let you know. And regardless, we'll let you know within 2 weeks. But like I said, because of the holiday, we couldn't make it work. We will make it work here. And get get at least an answer one way or the other.
it's a little late for the good neighbor thing, actually. If he'd come up earlier and said, hey, do you mind if I chop down 200 trees next to your property? You might have said, can you leave an extra 100 feet? Or you might actually work with them, you and Jim, and just said, okay, what's it going to be? But when you look outside one day, they're just mowing down the whole forest. That's not real good neighbor stuff, in my opinion. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
The only thing I'd like to say is, the town or the selectmen are not trying to minimize your concerns. It's not falling on deaf ears, right? The attorney that the planning board always used in the town seat council retired, and we got recommendations for this other attorney, and we gave him all the information that we had and your concerns you've been bringing to us. And he made a recommendation, and it didn't sit right with the board, and the board went and asked someone else. And, you know, I'd say we got a good deal on it because they didn't charge us a full board, but they said they agreed with the same position. All right, and we really, I mean, we understand your frustration. You have actions you can take, but at this time, there's nothing the town can take, and we're gonna pursue going to talk to Tormeo and see what can be done, and we bring that back to you, okay, because it's not, you know, but I just realize it's not falling on deaf ears. Every time you come back, we get a little bit of a nugget that we run with, and Ellen brought some more information, and we'll all research it again, but I just don't want you to think we're trying to minimize your concerns and just make this go away, because, you know, it's affecting everyone. It was affecting you, it's now pushing over a little more in the town, but
If I could just also clarify, once y'all find out who's in charge of blasting, could you complain on the town's behalf that they're doing more than just impacting their own property, and that they're impacting the residents of the
We
area?
thought we'd already done that.
yeah.
So,
It actually was felt as far away as Pillsbury pasture, which is, I
I'm a
looked
lot
up on
further
Google, it was
than
2 miles
Pillsbury.
away. Yeah.
I'm just saying that that's a real concern, because it's shaking everyone's houses, and,
It's actually cracked on the walls.
you know, it's,
so state police regulate the blaster,
yep. That I know.
main drilling and blasting, because I had several conversations with the bomb unit of New Hampshire State Police. What I've recently just been told is Graham does sign off on it.
So maybe you could not do that.
Graham may.
Well, I'm saying that the Board of Selectmen could speak with their fire chief about this particular issue and move forward with that I'm not telling the man that he shouldn't be able to pursue his job. But I'm just saying that maybe you cut down a little bit of the blasting and have to do it several times instead of one big huge one.
So
And
we've established that the fire chief or the fire department has issued a permit. Let us follow up on the process that they use to issue that, and what regulations they're using, because that obviously needs to be looked at.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Talk soon.
on Zoom have a public comment? If so, unmute yourself. I don't see anybody stepping forward.
Okay. We do have here, and did Cindy get together a list of what treasurers in other towns are being compensated? Because we are coming up with a deputy treasurer position, we want to make that, because of that, we wanted to just revisit what the treasurer position is being compensated, so, did anybody have any questions on that?
No, are you looking for recommendation and a motion? I'm gonna make a motion that we pay the deputy $50 per trip, as we did 2 weeks ago or whatever, on the grounds that if it's multi-trips in a row, like if the treasurer's gonna be absent for whatever time we decide, that it's deducted from that line item, and she is not paid. So in other words, if she leaves the month of February and her pay is just $200 a week or whatever it is, that we don't pay that 200 and pay the other person the $50. Now, if she misses 1 week because she's sick, that's another issue, but I don't think it's fair for an extended vacation or leave of absence and to still be paid and us spending extra money to pay somebody to fill in.
You do that with a stipend.
It's a stipend, it's not a salary, but
Right.
I don't know that you can do that with a stipend, can you?
I'd be curious.
Graham said, yes, they do.
If you take 7,800 to be honest, 78 divided by 52 comes out to 150. So, I agree with the $50, she should be paid. How we're gonna pay it, I don't know. I don't know if you can, it's a stipend for a treasurer.
I'd want to look into that before I.
Yeah, why don't we,
And quite honestly, the towns listed here aren't comparable to Kingston, and I think that's, you got Sandown, the only one that I'm familiar with, if you will.
But you got towns that are a lot bigger that are paying a lot less.
That's what I'm saying, this is not, I can't make a decision based on these numbers.
But she's salary.
Well, I would definitely forward this. I think we should forward this to the treasurer, and I think we should have a conversation with her. Maybe she'd be willing to.
That's his salary, she's
You
salary.
Yeah. Well, is it salary or is it stipend?
you gotta look at how many hours are involved, what volume of dollars get processed through the town. It's not as simple, you work 3 hours a day and we pay you $10,000 a year. I don't know.
and I also don't want this to be taken in any way, shape, or form as a knock on our treasurer. It's just an admirable job, but just as this deputy treasurer position has come up, we're just trying to make sure. We've gone through all these positions and making sure that everybody is being compensated fairly and in line with other municipalities, so.
This sheet says that she's being paid a salary of $7,800.
Well, that's what we were just questioning. I think he makes a good point. I think we should really get that opinion. I don't know. She may want to pay it out of her own, her treasurer. I don't know. But I think we should.
So we want to table it until next meeting?
Yes.
Research that?
Yeah.
But I think we should forward this to the treasurer just so she has the information and see if she has any ideas.
Well, can Cindy find out what Plasto's doing, what Danville's doing, what Epping is doing, Hampstead? Towns right around us. Stanhouse is the only one that's around us. And it would be nice to know what the annual volume of spending goes through the town.
Did that Atkinson sheet have anything in it about
So
salary?
then when I back in Cindy, I'd feel better if I had surrounding towns.
Well, that Atkinson report was surrounding towns. I never looked at it.
That was Hampstead, then we got the.
This was from,
It didn't list it. It didn't list it.
It didn't?
No, did not list that position. I looked.
yeah, so this is the voluntary survey that municipalities can put in for NHMA, so, Dawn, do you mind being the point man on that?
Sure, be more than happy to. So you want the area towns?
And an idea of what's their annual budget? Is Is that a fair number? I mean, if we have $6 million, if, I don't know, Litchfield has $60 million, it makes a difference.
Well, yeah, do you go by population or go by budget?
And,
You could do
but at the
both.
same time, I don't think we're asking our treasurer to review anything. We're asking her to sign it.
That's true, that's why we pay Cindy.
Right.
As a financial officer to review.
If there's a mistake made, I'm sure the treasurer's not gonna take responsibility for it.
May not take responsibility, but they may have some responsibilities. Yeah, she's bonded because it's her signature on it. When they do audits and that, I believe she has to be.
Is this thing gonna be bonded?
So let's do this. In addition to getting the additional salary information, why don't we get a job description and make sure that everybody is aware of what is entailed with the treasurer's position for the town of Kingston? Because,
And I'll make a motion, we table it till the next meeting.
Well, there's no motion on the table,
The
so.
next meeting's next Monday, okay?
Yeah.
he can still make that motion. Would you like to make that motion?
What?
Table it.
I was saying there's no motion on the table, so it's not on the table, but you can make a motion to table it if you want.
Well,
Well, you're really moving to bring this item back out to
Yeah.
the discussion next
Okay.
Monday night.
all right.
Add it
Let's
to
talk
the
about it next
agenda.
week.
Yeah, exactly.
So next one is the Geo Insight contract.
That was a pretty obvious thing.
Yeah, I just asked the question, but it's,
Susan said something about it. I said, that's not a capital expense. You have to be able to show something for a capital expense. You know, and both Clint's agree with that.
So the answer is no.
correct.
So it's not going to go into the cap, a zip or
They
whatever.
were just trying to show it in the future.
Yeah.
And that's a totally different thing. I mean, it's an expense we're gonna have yearly, but it's not a capital expense.
Okay. Next thing was the 7090 public hearing.
Yeah.
That was probably my fault that happened. I went to Ellen and I said, we need to put that committee together. And she kind of interpreted that we needed to do it to evaluate this proposal for Sanborn, not knowing that it had already been pretty much done. So there was kind of a rush put on it. And Susan's talked to most of them in the meantime, showed them what we've done and everything, but we are going to put that group together. Because it made it seem like an urgent thing, like we had to get it done to get it approved, but I said that had already been negotiated.
If we're still done by February, people are going to be asking us as a town for at the deliberative session. So I'd like to see us have a closure on it by then. To be
Well,
honest with you.
the thing we were doing was,
We just got it. I mean, we only had it a week or 10 days.
yeah,
Who we determine was on that committee again?
that committee is a member of the conservation, the heritage, the historical, planning and Glen Greenwood and planning board, selectmen.
Yeah.
It was 5.
Yeah, I don't think it was much bigger than that.
Do we know who's on it? Are they aware?
We're asking the people to serve.
Okay.
Ernie has said yes. Glenn Greenwood has said yes as an advisor. That's what it was. It's 5 plus Glenn, so it's 6.
Okay.
Do you want it uneven? I mean, an even number?
No, Glenn's not a voting member.
Oh, Glenn's not a voting member. Okay,
Yeah,
right.
It's just there for, and basically the
Right.
purpose, just to repeat, of that committee is to make sure that an application is complete and somewhat qualifies before it comes to selectmen. So we're not seeing applications that, we're not expecting a run on these because there aren't many areas that qualify for it. And in that area, there aren't many buildings that qualify for it. So,
Eric Chidwick has done a number of these, but our committee has not seen nothing. This is
No.
the
Right.
first one, so they should have an opportunity to review it anyway.
So when's the projected meeting for that committee?
but projected,
The meeting date?
Are they actually going to meet or they just?
They probably can Zoom, they probably will Zoom, I'm sure.
So, because you guys set up, last meeting, set the public hearing for this application for the 11th. Can move it back to 60 days.
the 11th, because I know there's a joint meeting of the historic and heritage on next Wednesday, Tuesday or Wednesday. So there's a joint meeting there next week.
I mean, the other thing is I don't know how many of those people are up for election. I don't think any of them are, but we may want to wait until after the election to set it up just so we don't have somebody out.
I'm not in favor of holding it up until after the election. I'll tell you right now, we need to move this opera place and let him have a go ahead so he can get ready to start rocking and rolling.
I don't think we need them for the annual project.
Nobody would fall into that category anyway.
Even if they did, if someone,
You're not up and then planning, wherever they say, well, is it gonna be Glenn from planning or they?
More than likely, I've got a confirmation
last
last
year, so it shouldn't affect. I'm assuming you're worried about the continuity of this as well. Having this,
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to get the 5 people that the original group said that it should be, the 5 crews.
It was their recommendation that came from Debbie Powers, if I remember correctly. The composition of the committee that we approved already.
and
Okay.
procedurally, could I ask, the sale didn't happen until the 79E is approved, correct?
Well, 79E was approved last year, and so the sale hasn't finalized because they haven't gone through us.
No, I know. They approved their application before they do this.
And we couldn't approve it until we got it.
Yep.
So we just got it 10 days ago.
Yeah,
So
okay.
that's where we're at. So are we rushing it a little bit? Yeah, but not too much. I think we should be prepared.
I think we need to do our due diligence. We're tracking any longer
No, I
than.
don't, I think they
I
should.
can put this crew together pretty quick.
And do it this month and do a Zoom
Okay.
and go for it, because I don't, as a town, I don't want to go to district meeting and not have an answer,
Okay.
to be honest with you. I think we should.
I think
We
this
want
is
to know.
quick. I mean, so far, everybody we talked to said yes, so.
Exactly. Everyone's definitely in
I know it's
favor.
gonna be a very seldom meeting group, and
And he was,
So-
and Chilling was on Chronicle last night for another project at the Newmarket things that there's more going on over here. So there's a lot still happening.
so I would entertain a motion to move the public hearing to February 1st. Is that doable, Rich?
I think that should be easy.
Okay, and I'll second that motion.
And that's for the, all right, first.
We
You seconded.
have to, as a board, accept the application.
Right.
And determine what gets waived or not.
So the committee is going to review it and then pass it on to us,
Right.
correct? And it will hold, and it's 2 public hearings, right, or is it just 1?
It's just one.
Yeah.
There's only 1?
But the committee's task is to ensure that they qualify for 79.
That's all that the committee's
And the application's complete.
That's correct.
application complete and that they qualify.
Yep.
That's all they're doing. They're not negotiating, they're not doing anything. It's a selection, but we're trying to stop, somebody from, like Phil said, that's putting in a front porch and tries
Yeah,
to
that's
do
it.
something and
No, there are-
shoot it down before it ever started the process.
The only one that I see coming down the pike after this is the old baking building, country store. They expressed interest in doing some renovations and siding and all kinds of stuff, but they pulled back in the middle of all this stuff here,
Yeah.
so I won't be surprised if next fall or sometime this summer we see more.
So you think?
But there aren't too many properties that qualify.
No, because it's only commercial district 1,
Right.
Historic District 1.
historically. And you think they'll be able to formulate and meet and everything else in time between now and?
Oh, God, yes,
Yeah.
Kevin, it's.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll be an issue at all that far away, and it's also on Monday when Glenn's already here. So shouldn't be an issue at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Good.
I mean, I think everybody that we're considering
Excellent.
is retired on the group.
I gotta make
So-
sure they all get the application I sent it to Bernie today. I wasn't sure who else was involved, so I'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have a motion, second. Further discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
St. James?
Yes.
And Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, new business. Swayze Gym to be used for town meeting.
Or reserve the gym yet, everything was going here and there, we have to do that.
For elections, you mean?
Yeah, so
Yes.
you want to be there, right?
Yes.
Will we be able to do broadcasting there, is my only question?
No.
This is
So
This is
voting.
town, this is for,
My bad.
we're at the auditorium in the high school.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I was
Okay. Committee liaison reports. Does anyone have anything with Christmas and New Year's and everything like that?
I mean, decision day 1 is Saturday. We don't anticipate any surprises. We're meeting 9 o'clock, I guess. So you guys are going tomorrow to finalize everything,
We're
right?
going tomorrow to meet with them and take a look around, but the meeting is Saturday at 9, it's already set.
Logistics for the space.
Yep. Can you just check with them? Typically, what we do is I would go get just coffee and donuts and we leave it in the back. We can't do that for the public, but would they allow on stage for us to have it?
I wouldn't go there.
Not on the stage? I'm just asking.
What I would do is if you want some kind of libation coffee, you bring your own. I think because during a pandemic, no way we're gonna be
Okay.
providing anything to it.
All right, so lunch, are we gonna do break for lunch, or usually we?
We're gonna be finished by lunch.
No, you're not gonna be finished for lunch. No, usually we do a takeout or individually wrapped, but
Can I make a suggestion to you?
good.
Panera makes a great sandwich takeout package that is unbelievable.
Well, I would prefer to support local industry. And we were able to pull this off for voting where everybody got an individually wrapped lunch, so I don't think that's a logistical problem.
Okay, I'm not objecting to your comment, I stand corrected. I think you're right, we should support them.
No, it wasn't an issue.
I was just trying to make it easy. They do have, set up to do sandwiches and wraps and the whole shebang.
Okay, so I'll have a menu there, and we can just pass it around quick at like 10:30 or something, and I'll call it. That's what I'm checking because we're not here. So okay.
So, okay. I'll ask you later.
I just, like I said, just trying to, you guys are going, I want to make sure you're going tomorrow, you get any question. The only other concern I had was from the email, the no public comment.
They have it set up so there's a Zoom that's issued to anybody that's participating in the boards. The public gets a link to YouTube. So
I'm sorry.
They get a link to the YouTube recording, which is on a delay.
Okay.
They're not going to participate in real time. They can
Right, but are we going to allow it for, okay, so those
That's
active.
something you're going to decide. The budget committee, right?
Yes, but it's, the department heads, they'll be there in person, I assume? Is that what we're gonna do? Because they have to be able to speak, that's all.
I think they-
The trustees of the library, all those people need to have access to be able to speak, that's,
Are you available to go to that site tomorrow?
depending on what time, 1 o'clock you going? I should be able to.
It would be good because if you know people, the
Okay.
heads that
All right.
can't be there, they're going to want to Zoom, have to make sure they get to the.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
I don't think there's been any more changes.
It's been a mess.
Yeah.
Well, Adam is not going to be there this weekend because of
They'll have 2 of their people on site, so I've been told today.
And that's nice because then they would not normally be working on the weekends. So that's,
They assured me there would be 2 of their people there for us this weekend.
Yeah, no, it's just we gotta figure everything, a lot of different things, because we're in different times.
yes,
Yeah,
we are.
yeah.
That's the understatement of the year. And it's only January 4th.
It'll be interesting to see. All right,
Okay.
so that's all I had.
MS4 improvement today, which was Dennis and Rich and me and Glenn, Brian, and we went over all the local changes that have to be made to our regulations to work with MS4. We're going to make those and then have our next meeting the 25th to start going through that stuff. We talked a little bit about the group that's helping us and how to use them so we don't run up extra charges and everything because she has a contract and then she has an hourly fee, so we went through that. Book committee, everything is done, sent to the editor, waiting for reviews back, so that's all looking good. Haven't had a planning board meeting since this, or a heritage meeting, so that should be it for me.
Is there going to be a discussion as to how we defray the cost of this MS4 compliance?
Yeah, we talked about that quite a bit today, and basically we're stuck with the cost because we cannot charge. I mean, how I said is, just take the warehouse situation. If that's approved, we're going to lay out a responsibility that they have to do at their expense. They have to have it certified by PE, and they have to do it. We're going to have to verify that they've done it, get the reports that they've done it, turn in those reports. It's going to be our part in it.
And that would be part of the job description for the new code enforcement officer.
Code enforcement officer, if he goes out there to verify they do it and stuff, that's our responsibility. And we couldn't come up with any way to charge anybody for any of this because you can't set up a bond. Because you set up a bond for 5 years, they have to do it year 6, 7, 8, so a bond would have to go on forever. And according to them, we can't legally charge for this. This is just one of those expenses the town's stuck with.
Wastewater compliance permit.
But the federal government is telling us,
EPA surcharge permit.
Get creative.
If we charge $100 to every applicant who has a plan on file with the planning board, it's a $100 permit for each year. And then the onus is on them to ensure that everything is up to snuff.
we talked about this a couple of years ago with different inspections, that if we had a $100 fee for every business in town to go around and do it, because Seabrook does that. Every business has to have a yearly review to make sure they're in compliance, and it's $100. And then they pool that money, for such things as this.
I think we look kind of a combination of both. You're in the process of looking at permitting fees. We asked Sumner, is there a way we come up with a, EPA fee for any project in town, whether it's, what would that dollar amount be, just to at least offset the cost?
We charge for a permit for everything. What's the difference between charging someone a building permit and charging someone to have a stormwater system?
I'm just going by what she said and what Rich said and everything, that they said you can't do it.
So why don't we just do it and see what happens?
I don't know if I'd at least ask.
I know that.
I know what you're saying.
I'm being very cavalier, that's not my intent. My intent is, I'm agreeing with Phil Meister over here. We got a permit for everything else, why can't we put a permit for this?
You don't call for stormwater, just call for whatever. I think Sumner could come up with a way.
Well, there's specific.
It's gotta be.
I'll let your committee do their thing.
I would be more likely to start charging for the occupancy permit or something and require it yearly and to pool that money, I think. But I think this is a Sumner question, I really do.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think that there's got to be use your phrase, creative way to offset this cost.
I'd love to offset the cost. We're talking a lot of money. This was kind of a catch-up contract, but it's still going to be a lot even.
Yeah, it's only going to get more.
If the voters are going to elect people who put these kind of rules into place, and the town is then, poop rolls downhill, and the town is forced to pay for it, then, it has to,
The sad thing about this is if we don't enforce it, and we don't have a code enforcement officer to help enforce it, then the federal government will come after the town.
Yes, heavily.
And that's what people need to realize, is that code enforcement officer is going to protect the town from major fines. We're not talking hundreds of dollars, we're talking
Tens of thousands.
tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of dollars, which would happen in local towns.
I just think this should be incorporated in the fee structure we're setting up for permitting. What we call it is a different story.
Well, I could call Sumner anyway, so I'll ask him to
See if some of the other towns have it.
We're not, you can't be the only one.
We're not. Every municipality.
We already did the thing. Our towns have permits for a lot of different things, and we're nowhere close to one. But
Okay. Code enforcement officer, draft warrant.
You got a paper here.
On this sheet.
Rich asked Cindy to come up with what should be on the warrant for that salary. 9-month total is $65,690. Plugged it in there. But that's for $25 an hour, 40 hours.
So we do 2/3.
oh, this is what if that
Yeah,
one.
it's got all the other things on top, but the bottom of the highlight is the one.
Bottom left. And I've said it before, but this position shouldn't make money for the town. I mean, to a point.
I don't even think it's making money, it's saving the town money.
Saving.
It's saving a lot of things. It's freeing a lot of people up to do what they're hired to do instead of other things, mainly our chief of police that does a lot of the code enforcement now that, you know, he may have to follow up on some of it then, but all the little stuff would be handled by this person. The MS4 stuff would be handled by this person. It was kind of agreed today, kind of what I think you said last meeting, is the MS4 person is going to be like the field rep for the MS4, the enforcement agent, and Rich's hire, if that goes through, will be the paperwork end of it. And sending out the notices and everything, you know, your yearly report is due, all that type of stuff, because that's what the federal government is strict on, is to make sure we're telling people that stuff is due.
On this code enforcement officer, we need to come up with a dollar amount for next year. So do we want one as of May 1st or June 1st?
It's saying 9 months.
What I was told to do is 9 months,
9 months, okay.
and that's what this shows. But very bottom.
Because it starts in.
Yeah, but what is this? This year is 9 months?
That's what 9 months costs. The line above it's what a year costs.
Gotcha.
So the warrant is going to be
Yep, I got it, I see it now, thank you.
And then the top line is, we hadn't decided on a dollar amount for that person, and that's given us 3 options.
What is the, I mean, that's pretty much an admin assistant. So what is the, comparing it up?
Well,
You wanted to compare to fire and police admins.
at $20 an hour, the far right is still gonna be less than most of the people getting in that position in this town. But most of them have been in that position for several years. You know, so for a new hire, I think that's reasonable. And Rich, you weren't here last meeting, but Rich and a few people agreed that they didn't want to go much lower because of getting a quality person.
Right.
They want people to apply for this.
And we also talked about it, maybe the regular salary will be $20 an hour, but you know, it's probably started at 18 and for a 60-day trial period to see if it's gonna work.
Okay.
You know, with the incentive that if it works, then they get bumped up $2 an hour after their review. Because again, my experience has been it's either works or it doesn't, you know, very quickly.
Yeah.
And this person's gonna have it. The chances of us finding someone that has been a highway department, and it's gonna be slim. So
Well, I'd be comfortable with the 20. I'm trying to compare it to, on the grand scheme, I don't want to bring anyone
It's
over
gotta-
anyone.
it's gotta
We're gonna,
be-
you
it's
know,
gotta be 20.
keep in line. I don't want to go lower, put it that way.
And what we're gonna have to do, or a town manager or whatever is gonna have to do is, if this project at Sanborn goes through, we're gonna have to be careful that the right person's doing the right thing we're gonna really have to get into our descriptions, well, that should it be a code enforcement issue or should it be a building inspector issue? You know, that type of stuff.
And hopefully they'll work together for a while and.
Yeah, if some of these big projects go through, a 20-hour-a-week building inspector is not gonna make it.
I think it'll be very easy to develop a transition plan from the start. I think before we hire anyone, that should be in place, you know, Bill did. Robert
Right. He's on
made
board.
that,
Yeah.
can come up with that beforehand and we follow that.
First, we gotta get it passed.
So you want a motion on the highway department hire?
I think we already passed that last week, didn't we?
I think we decided we wanted to look at salaries and the effect of it is what I thought we left it at.
I don't remember what we voted, I know, but we talked $20 with it, but it started 18 for a trial period.
31354 for the warrant article. That doesn't sound right.
That already passed. So it would just be the code enforcement.
I'm sorry, say that again?
The highway department passed.
Yeah.
So the only one to be voted on is the code enforcement.
And I'll make a motion to approve the warrant article to state the dollar amount is listed as not $25, but the bottom line, we're looking for funding for the first year, $65,609.
Okay, I got a motion?
Second.
Second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote.
Alessio?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Yes.
St. James?
Yes.
And Wilson?
Yes.
While we're on warrant articles, we will have to take a look at some point soon, but I believe we passed a procedure or policy that when we do the warrant articles on the ballots.
We covered it last meeting.
My bad.
We actually had a sheet
The
last
impact
meeting.
sheet.
We had a sheet that had every dollar amount under it, and I think it's gonna make some of these easier to pass.
I agree.
The code enforcement also
Okay.
was like 10 cents or something, it was,
So we didn't do the Dunkin' Munchkin, it was a dollar amount. Okay.
I went-
Very good, I want to make sure.
I went to Cindy a couple weeks ago and reminded her that that was approved, and she said, oh, yes, and she had it all ready last
Okay, I
week.
want to make sure that we had that, okay.
Are we gonna have an updated draft of the warrant articles soon? Where are we with that?
Yeah, I don't know that I put it in again. It's not too much changed. It was just adding those salaries. About,
Well,
I got one.
This is what I had
Is
from
that the
last
last
week.
time? Okay. The only thing I did was plug in the highway secretary that you voted on.
Okay.
And I did get one petition article for So Rock.
But Articles 13, 14, 15, 16, I don't have copies of.
Oh, yeah, they're not. I had to shuffle the numbers. Yeah, they're not there. They're placeholders in case something else came in, so I will fix that.
Okay, so, yeah, that's what I'd like, yeah, if you could have an updated one.
Yeah.
And can I suggest that when we are doing drafts, you get a date somewhere on at the end?
Okay.
Because it's hard to follow when you got something if you don't have a date. I think it'll make your life easier, and even when we talk about it, oh, that's the old one, get one date on such.
They all look the same.
And they do sometimes, thank you. What's the same?
Okay, we all set? All right, second public comment.
Is nobody on Zoom?
Okay. There's a note from the Trailblazers Snowmobile Club, requesting access to places they already have access.
We don't have any problem with this group that I'm aware of, do we?
No. They actually maintain the trails.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would say is certainly not advocating for the indefinite approval, I think.
An annual approval might be appropriate, or?
So the agreement has a term of, the options are indefinite, 1 year from landowner approval, or 5 years from landowner approval. And underneath, it says this agreement may be terminated for any cause by either party on 30 days written notification. So I will entertain a motion for, since there's only one place for signature on here, to authorize the chair to sign this,
For a 5-year
whatever the
board
motion
chooses.
states.
I move that we allow a 5-year window for permission for the 7 New Hampshire Trailblazers and authorize the chair to sign on our behalf.
Second.
Okay, we get a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Yes, shouldn't we put a clause in there that this can be ended by either party with X number of days' notice?
So right underneath of the, where you select the term, it says this agreement may be terminated for any cause by either party within 30 days written notification.
That works for me.
Good.
Okay. Anybody else? Roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Coombs?
Abstain.
St. James?
Yes.
And Wilson?
Yes.
Isn't that in that?
It is. What is it?
All right, we have a butter notice from the HDC on the old Badger Tavern property.
This has been before the HDC for months, and it's finally going the next step. He withdrew the,
They get their land stretcher out.
well, he withdrew it for a while to redo it based on comments. Now he's back again with it.
Okay. We have a letter from the town of Hampstead regarding our participation in a household hazardous waste collection day that was held on October 24th, 2020.
And I went to that, and it was very well organized and amazing how many people they serviced so quickly.
Well, if you would like accurate numbers, there were 82 households from Kingston, which is 13% participation, resulting in a total bill of $3,671.90
For our share.
for our share.
Wow.
And,
It's expensive.
they just take it, they don't charge anyone, right?
No, they don't charge the residents. You
Okay.
just drive up and they take it out of your truck.
Yeah, it's free, so you pay your taxes.
They were sending people around to the middle school. When you went in first, they gave you a form to fill out. You came all the way around the building. The first guys were the highway department that was taking waste oil, gas, anything like that that they could burn in their waste oil furnaces and getting rid of that free. And then the next step was they had like 20 people taking stuff out of your car so you never get out of your car.
Yeah, it's pretty, I
I mean, it
participated.
was amazing how well it was organized.
So are they billing us for the 3,000 whatever? Is that what that?
That's what I thought.
Did we budget for anything?
I think we do budget.
We usually do. I thought I've seen it before.
I think, so there's a total charge of $4,449.95 minus $778.05. I'm assuming that's the residents' portion that they contributed, and then that's where we come up with 3671.
Do you need a motion
This isn't really a bill, it's just a letter stating the breakdown.
Information that I just, yeah.
to? Oh, so they haven't sent us the bill yet?
So I think we'll hold off until the actual
Okay,
bill is
that's fine.
before us.
I'm pretty sure we have a line item in the budget for it. It's up to it. And we take turns at it. Some years it's
Yeah.
So there's a letter here that says it's from an architect, I think it's just a sales guy with a lumber company, who inspected one of the properties at Bent Grass that we had cease and desist on regarding the structural integrity. He felt the exterior sheathing and interior framing.
I talked to Robert about this last week when this first came up with the other issues with drainage there. And we made it clear that Robert needed to inspect.
Okay, yeah.
We could care less what this guy says because he's
You don't
selling,
trust a salesman?
he's selling the material, so why wouldn't he give him a good report?
Sounds legit to me.
Oh, there is an architect here on page 2. I wanted to put the sales guy first.
An architect or a structural engineer?
Well, the main thing we're trying to figure out is when all the Tyvek was destroyed by sunlight, did the weather do anything to the underlaid plywood?
Well, yeah, it's not plywood, it's OSB, which is not supposed to be exposed.
Right.
Yeah.
But
So limited,
sometimes,
yeah. I don't blame you.
sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
Well, we're referencing Mr. Robert, right?
Yes.
We've already discussed the letters there. And then there are, so we have our totals from Waste Management for the year for the board's review. Anything else taking on that? Brings us to the minutes.
Move the adopt the minutes as printed for both the regular session and non-public.
Okay, a motion?
Someone second it, please.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote, please.
Alessio?
Yes.
Briggs?
Yes.
Holmes?
Yes.
St. James?
Abstain.
And Wilson?
Yes.
Could I ask one thing? Does anyone know, I'm looking at the warrant articles, not the warrant articles, the manifest, and there's a bill here from In-Look Group for the Kingston Historical Society or Museum Committee for, looks like archiving. And it says Sanborn Project, December 2020 bill, it's for $720. Anyone know what this is for?
Is that the scanner that they want to buy?
No, this is actually archiving. It's not buying a scan, it's an invoice. They did 6 site visits, 3 hours each time, billed at 40 hours for 120 each time, for a total of 720. I just don't know what the Sanborn Project is.
I suggest we send it back for more explanation and details.
Do they have a budget per se? Is this part of their budget?
No, they have their own budget, so I just don't remember this. I'm drawing a blank.
I don't know what that
And you
is.
guys go to whoever's on the historical, but it's, so,
Check on it. Dead on.
all right. Sorry.
No.
Caught me off guard.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention, Kevin.
So you're gonna send it back to, for more detail?
I'll call Cindy tomorrow.
You put Debbie, you know what I want.
Anybody else? Last chance. Make a motion, we adjourn.
Moved.
I need a second.
No one wants to second that?
Oh, actually, I just, one comment.
Yes.